Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to give you a bunch of super cozy, kind of eerie winter book recommendations. I remember probably 2 years ago, I just was at home and it was snowing outside and I really wanted to read, but I hated that all the books I was reading were taking place like in summer or somewhere else. It just made it so not fun to read those books when that wasn't what was happening outside. And I'm pretty sure that's when I first stumbled across Bookstagram, Booktube, or anything similar to something like this video. Was so excited when I found out there's other people who want to read based on what season it is outside to have their book fit their mood and their atmosphere. These are a couple of my favorites. I have seen a few of these on other similar recommendation videos. Some of these I'm just really surprised haven't come up at all. If one of these books are new for you, great. And I'm just happy to share with you some books that I really love to read. Although, full disclosure, there are probably three books I'm going to recommend that I have personally not read yet, but they are on my list and I'm very excited to read them because I've heard nothing but good things, or that the description totally fits this mood, this kind of video. So if you've read them or read any of these books, I'd love to know what you think at the end of the video. Go ahead and leave a comment down below and share your favorite wintry books with me and anyone else who decides to watch. First off, let's start with some novels, classic wintry books, historical classic novels. First one is one that I listened to on Audible because it's so long. It really made the experience so much better for me to listen to it on Audible, and I think that's why I loved this book so much. That is the classic Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. It takes place in Russia. There are lots of seasons in it. Obviously, Russia is not full snow year-round everywhere in Russia, but most of the book just sets that kind of dark, wintry, up in the north atmosphere. There's so much tragedy and dark theme running through this book that it also just kind of seems to fit the season, even the setting aside, though it is perfect for winter. If you've seen the modern movie with Keira Knightley, I love Keira Knightley and Jude Law, and I'm pretty sure listening to the audiobook, those are still the characters' faces that I see for them in my head. Full disclosure, I completely agree with Hollywood in that is kind of an atrocious telling of this story. There's so much left out, which, like any long classic novel, that makes sense. But a big part of the Anna Karenina book, it's about 3 separate love stories that are in the book. Although Anna's is obviously front and center and kind of the main tragedy, there's also just the beautiful storyline of Kitty and Constantine, and the fact that they're both secretly in love with each other. Circumstances have just never aligned until like midway through the book for them to even profess that love, let alone end up together. But once they are, spoiler alert, once they are together, it's them and their love story of they both love the simple things of living in the countryside and tending to Constantine's farm, which is so not what privileged Kitty is used to. But just the snow and the atmosphere of being in a cabin and all the daily chores involved with surviving in that kind of weather. Oh, that really just sets the whole winter mood for me in that book. And it's, to me, a superior love story in the end. Anna Karenina, 10 out of 10 winter book. Continuing with the theme of classics, one of my favorites, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This one, I guess, could also be considered a winter fall book. This book is the first classic I ever read all the way through. I think I was like 14, and I only read it because I had seen the Tom Hardy, and oh god, he was married to the woman who played Kathy in real life. I think they're divorced now. Anyway, the PBS version, it's gold. If you haven't seen it, it's very long, but it's great. Tom Hardy as Heathcliff is...
You've made yourself a pretty prison, have you not, by being too impatient to marry?
He gave me not a word. In 3 years, not one indication whether you were alive or dead.
When I heard that you were to marry, I had one thought in my head: I would return. Have one glimpse of your face. Settle my score with Hindley, then prevent the law by executing myself. Now I see I should have stuck to my cause.
Wow. It's Tom Hardy. This book just really tore my heart into pieces for the first time. Before, I'm pretty sure I ever had a first love or anything similar. God, it really is just such a sad book, and I think that's why a lot of people don't love this one, but I think it's also super realistic and kind of a star-crossed lovers, classic trope, tragic love story. I think just the setting on the cliffs and how cold it is, and while Kathy's dying of pneumonia towards the end of the book, it's just so, you feel the cold in your bones even if it's not quite full snow. The whole book setting, it just has such a cold and kind of eerie atmosphere to it that I think that's also part of what adds to the gothic nature of this classic, but still one of my favorites. Perfect for reading in the cold, dark times. Another one of my favorites is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. If you've seen the recent movie adaptation, maybe you already know and love this story, but if you haven't read the physical novel, I highly, highly recommend reading that book cover to cover. The characters are just so much more rich on the page. They sink deep into your heart. I'm pretty sure we all have a little bit of each of the Marsh sisters within us. I personally have always related to Jo. I was totally a little bit of a tomboy growing up. Have never done what society has wanted me to do. I was kind of a rebel, made my own path, loved writing. I love Little Women, and I think the whole setting is set perfectly for winter, whether it's through the holidays or the months after when it's cold or when the ice is just starting to melt off of the trees. This book really does it for me in the winter season, and I'm sure it will for you too. Another, what I would consider a classic, maybe some other people wouldn't, another great LM first and middle initial author, that is L.M. Montgomery's The Blue Castle. I actually got recommended this book as part of a November readathon with Darling Desi and people on her channel. This is my first L.M. Montgomery book. I know of Anne of Green Gables and I watched Anne with an E on Netflix and I love that show, but this is my first time reading anything written by her. I would love to start the Anne of Green Gables series, but again, that feels like more of a spring read to me, so I'm gonna push it off until probably March. This is actually one of her only books that was written intentionally for adults. While the whole book doesn't take place in winter, the big scenes that just make your heart kind of dance with the main characters take place in winter, up in Canada, out on a lake. She does such a rich job of describing winter scenery and the frozen lakes and the archipelago and the little individual islands with people's summer cabins. There's people living in them in the winter or hiding their key for their house in the nook of a birch tree or a hollowed out hole, and all of the things described in the setting of this book really just make you feel so cozy, and I think this is a story that appropriately breaks your heart and mends it back together with a message of hope. The main character being a 29-year-old who is still not married. In the early 1900s was pretty serious social taboo. Even a lot of people our own age and millennial generation and up who are like, I need to be married, or I haven't achieved my purpose. I think this book is so good for affirming that you make your own adventure in life. If you find romantic love, great, but there's so many other kinds of love and there's so many other things that make life worth living, and it's about not giving up on yourself. It's about making your own choice to live for you and not to live your life tiptoeing around other people, unhealthy family structures. It just has so many badass themes in this book. Perfect winter atmosphere read. This is kind of an off the beaten path one. Again, one I haven't really seen recommended in quite so many of the winter book videos. It is actually one I got recommended to me on Likewise. I was looking for just novels of any sort set in Sweden that weren't Fredrik Backman novels. Love Fredrik Backman. It seems to be like he's the only Swedish author on people's radar. So read this one on my Kindle, Astrid and Veronica. This is such a heartwarming novel. It takes place in Sweden, north of Stockholm. It is about a young woman who, it's kind of a mystery what her story is. All you know is she's a writer. She needs a break to write and to start over. She's kind of working through some old traumas, living in this house where her next door neighbor on her driveway, kind of in the middle of nowhere, is this older woman who people in town call her the witch, are really not so nice to her or her reputation, but it doesn't really deter Veronica from becoming friends with Astrid, is the older woman's name you come to learn. And it's really about these two women healing their own past and healing their own trauma through their friendship and coming to learn from one another and take pleasure in each other's company and what they can bring to the present moment and how they can share each other's pain in such a graceful way. Veronica's character is not, most of her backstory does not take place in Sweden, and there are quite a few flashbacks, but Astrid's whole story, she is born and raised from kind of a dysfunctional family, just the rich Nordic woods setting that you would ever hope to find in a novel. It was exactly what I was looking for when I wanted a book like this. So again, Astrid and Veronica, 5 stars in my book. Now for winter thriller mystery, we have The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. I actually purchased this on Amazon Kindle when it was like a Kindle deal for like 99 cents one day. Everyone was talking about The Guest List by Lucy Foley, but I hadn't read anything of hers, so I figured this would be a good introduction. I haven't started it, so this is one that's on my to-be-read list for this season, but everybody I've seen has also loved this one. I'm assuming from what I've read from the description, I think it grabbed my attention because it reminded me of like The Hateful Eight. That to me is one of the all-time most perfect winter movies. That Quentin Tarantino film specifically, one of my tops, and this book sounded a lot like that kind of vibe. I'm pretty sure this one takes place in Scotland in the winter, and it is a murder mystery. Check it out. Or if you've read it, let me know how many stars would you give it. Another book that is on my to-be-read for this season is The Memoirs of Stockholm Sven by Nathaniel Ian Miller. I found this book in a local bookshop. They usually carry some more independent authors and smaller, less discovered authors' books. The cover was beautiful. I've been teaching myself Swedish, so you may have picked up I have kind of a thing for any kind of Nordic, Scandinavian setting. This one just sounded amazing. It takes place super north in Sweden, almost the Arctic Circle. This guy is just trying to survive. It's written like a memoir. There's all kinds of challenges and survival, and kind of gives me like Leo DiCaprio in The Revenant, but in Sweden. That's what I'm getting from the description and reviews I've read on this book. It also sounds like it has a lot of that theme of unexpected friendships and building relationships when you're not expecting them. Really looking forward to that one. Another one on its way here, very delayed in the mail, is The City Baker's Guide to Country Living. This one I've seen on a lot of recommendations for books that feel like Gilmore Girls. And Gilmore Girls is totally one of my all-time favorite shows. I've seen every season of it, which is a lot of seasons and a lot of hour-long episodes, at least twice. I'm pretty sure anytime the first snow starts to fall, I just hear Lorelai Gilmore's voice saying,
"I smell snow.
What?
It's coming. I always know. I can smell it and I'm never wrong."
So to me, it's also just classically winter. This book is supposed to have similar vibes to Gilmore Girls and takes place in the winter. Has like a Christmas tree on the cover. I mean, I'm open to it. I'm not really a Hallmark Lifetime movie kind of gal, but if that's the vibe the book has, if it's like Gilmore Girls, I'm sure I'm gonna love it. Okay, book I had some of the highest hopes for this year, but also was slightly disappointed for my own bias of being married to a therapist. I thought the whole neurological disorder thing and all of the scenes, especially the book opening with that, her feeling physical pain when she sees an animal being cut open to the point where she passes out and also dies, that was just a little overdone to me, and I thought it really took away from the good parts of this story and the good messages it had in it about conservation for animals like wolves. But I also, as someone whose education was in sustainability, environmental causes, I really loved the approach that she gave in giving a two-sided perspective on certain environmental issues like wolves and reintroducing them in areas where they've been significantly either endangered or completely eradicated in population because of hunters thinking they're killing livestock or any of the etc. Really doing a good job at getting people to realize that wolves serve a purpose in an ecosystem. That is reducing the overpopulation of deer who eat tree shoots and prevent the regrowth of new trees to sprout. Really have a negative impact on the overall landscape when they're not properly managed. So wolves do have this goal of biological control. Environmental tangent over. However, this book takes place during some of the coldest times in Scotland. I thought there were just so many moments in it where she's in a cozy knitting circle with a bunch of people from this really small town, getting to know them. It felt so cozy, and it's snowing outside, or at the end she's like running through the forest at the climax of the book, and just the cold conditions where your character is almost dying because of the cold. It sets winter into real perspective and survival mode. And like I said, overall I would still recommend it, and I would still give it 4 out of 5 stars even with those things I really disliked about the story arc and characters. I think the themes are so important and the atmosphere setting is so good that it really still just did it for me. And another one that was also a book of the month read was The People We Keep. This one was so unexpected, you guys. I read this one on the plane when I was still a flight attendant and remember getting towards the end and just trying to hide my tears because I was ugly happy crying so hard. The main character is just so tragic in a very underrepresented way for a lot of people, coming from living in a trailer park with a dysfunctional or absent parent and just holding on to a core of yourself and who you are. This book is perfect for winter because it takes place up outside of Buffalo. A lot of the story take place on campus of Ithaca College. She's not a student there, but she is a musician and she's struggling to just get any gig playing she can and meeting people along the way, and she's never really had people in her life who care for her or love her, even though so many crappy things happen to her. The story just follows all of these people who come into her life, whether it's keeping her from freezing to death from trying to sleep in her car or giving her a cup of coffee and letting her sleep on their futon, and all of these people becoming important people in her life that remind her you can choose your own path and everything ends up being okay, and when there's good people around you, that's all you really need in life. Okay, last book, because it's kind of a wild card. I am not one who really frequents the romance section of the bookstore, and I have total respect for anybody that loves those Harlequin romance novels. That is excellent. Bridgerton has kind of bridged that gap for historical romance being more mainstream and accepted. Before there was Bridgerton, there was Lisa Kleypas. I actually heard from Lisa Kleypas on the Rachel Hollis podcast when she was a guest, probably in like 2018, 2019, and I am a big sucker for historical fiction of any kind. I ordered these books not really realizing they were like in the romance section, like the $5.99 books, but the Wallflowers series, there's 4 of them, are some of the best books I've ever read. I adore them. They feel like putting on my favorite cozy sweater. I've read some of them twice. They're that good to me. There are 4 girls in London. They just never get asked to dance. They're the oldest girls still at the balls each season, and their families are all plotting or scheming or worried about them. Each book has a different season. The 3rd book is The Devil in Winter, and redhead, yes. Evie is the one that this book is about. So she's the 3rd of the friends to have her moment in her season, which this one is winter. The first one takes place in summer, the second one in fall, the 3rd one winter, 4th one spring. This book is just really, what can I even say? I love Evie so much. She is the most misunderstood, underestimated underdog in a historical fiction book that I've read. She starts out with like a stutter that's really severe. She comes from like a really abusive father, runs like a dark gambling ring in the city. They run off in the middle of a winter night to get married so that her crazy, greedy aunt can't marry her off to an inbred cousin and take her money. It is wild. This book is one of my favorite. I think the Wallflowers series in general should be read from the beginning, starting in summer, so you grow with the characters in the natural arc. But getting to this 3rd book, it is so worth it. I love Evie and her storyline and the winter atmosphere of this novel in the UK. I'm pretty sure they end up in Gretna Green in Scotland. Yeah, that's where they go to get married. All over. It is a wonderful book. I don't think it gets enough buzz. I really love these books. I hope this is a new fun one for you. If you've read these, please leave a comment because I'd love to hear. As you can see, my cover is pretty worn from my multiple reads through this book. And if you've heard little claws pattering on the ground the whole time, that's from this creature, this one here. Just the face of fear all the time in this one. This is Lola. I'm sure you'll see her around in future videos or in my previous video. Lola is one of our 2 dogs. We have Banjo also. Tried and true reading companions. Very grateful for them. And Lola's blank look of an existential crisis that's always happening in her head. Well, once again, thank you friends. If you watched this video all the way through. Hopefully there were some new book recommendations for you to read this winter, to snuggle up in your favorite blanket or sweater with a cup of tea, your favorite kind of coffee, maybe a plate of cookies. Just enjoy the ambiance of being inside when it's cold out, being cozy in your own space with a good book. If you have other winter books that you love and haven't really seen on some of the winter read channels or books, please leave them down below in the comments. I would love to hear what those are. Otherwise, thank you for being here. Hope to see you again next time on my channel. Thank you.
Yeah, now I know the time I got.